Last time we talked about major 7 sharp 5 chords and the scale that goes with them coming from the magic melodic minor scale. And so today let's talk about another chord, the altered chord, and the altered scale that goes with it. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rubicki. I'm glad that you're here. Last time we talked about major 7 sharp 5 and the Lydian augmented mode or scale, and today we are talking about the altered scale and altered chord. Let's review the primary sort of root position melodic minor, but real quick before I do, I want to talk about the nomenclature of altered. What I mean is what you see written on a page, right? So we might see B7 alt, A-L-T, that means altered, and apparently back in the day, sort of before it became codified, seeing those letters, altered, or the word altered, could mean like alter any tension that you want, or maybe perhaps even any note that you want, but it doesn't mean that anymore. It has a very specific thing that we're going to talk about today. So I just wanted you to know that I think it's kind of come full circle now that everybody understands it is this one specific thing, but just in case every once in a while you run into some sort of disagreements about what altered is, and it is very specifically this thing we're talking about. So let's go to the melodic minor scale. We'll be in C again. So this is C melodic minor. Just for review, we had C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B natural, and C. Remember, I said that I thought of the first half of this scale as minor and the second half as major. This is minor, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B, C, minor. And in a way, it's sort of like you can kind of think about it like it's just a major scale, but instead of the natural third, it's a minor third. That's one other way to think about this. Where this gets interesting is when you start to go to the modes, or when you rearrange the notes of this particular scale. So if we start from, last time we started from the 3rd degree, now we're going to start from the 7th degree, which is B natural. But we're going to play those same notes from C melodic minor. So that would be B, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B. And when we're thinking about lots of these sort of modes or scales, it's important when we get into this sort of next level stuff that we're very comfortable with thinking and harmonically. So we're sort of thinking of two things at once. So one note that would be called one thing is the same as, theoretically, as another note. So when we're talking about the altered scale and altered chords, for example, we have to sort of shift your perspective a little bit from the notes that we're talking about. Here's what I mean. Remember we just played B, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B. This E flat, B, C, D, E flat, is really the third of a B7 altered chord, B, D sharp, okay? And this F is really either, here's another thing where you really gotta sort of float and be flexible. The F and the G could be either, the F could be either a sharp 4 or a flat 5, and the G could be either a sharp 5 or a flat 13. Generally, I'm thinking flat 13 there. What I'm saying is, if we're in the key of B major, okay, let's look at B major real quick. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. So we go 1, B, C sharp to D sharp. Now F is the next note in the altered scale. So this is either E sharp, F natural, or it's F sharp flatted, so that's F natural. So it's either a sharp 4 or a flat 5. And the G, remember for a natural 5 in B, we had F sharp. We're going up a half step to G, so that is either F sharp sharp, F double sharp to G, so sharp 5, or it's G sharp down a half step. G sharp is the 6 of B natural, or the 13. So it's a flat 13, we're taking it down. So when we get to some of these keys, or some of this, I don't even want to call them keys necessarily, some of the root position sounds, it has this floaty sort of mixed all together sort of thing to it. That said, the chord that is built, like the 4-part chord that I think of when I think of dominant 7 altered, would be B, the root, natural 3rd, flat 5, F natural, and A natural, flat 7. So 1, 3, flat 5, flat 7. So it's almost like a dominant 7, flat 5 chord at its root, right? But the important stuff of the altered sound comes in the tensions. So let's talk about the numbers that relate, the scale degree numbers in any altered scale. We're going to stay on this one because we started on C melodic minor just to keep us rooted, but some of them from a different root, some altered scales from different roots are a little bit more, I don't know, easy to understand, maybe because we're not talking about B major, which is not necessarily as familiar for all of us. So again, let's look at the B major scale. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. If we take the notes of the altered scale, we've got B, the root. Next is C natural, okay? The natural 9 is C sharp. So this C natural is a flat 9. It's the C sharp down a half step. The next note in the altered scale is D natural. That D natural is the 9 up a step. So it's the C sharp, not up a step, up a half step. The C sharp up a step to D natural. So we've got a flat 9, B root, flat 9 is the C natural, D natural, or C double sharp, is the sharp 9, B, C, D, and now remember we had this enharmonic. This E flat is now the D sharp, so it's the 3rd. Then we've got F, let's call that flat 5. G, again, is flat 13. So the 13, or the 6th degree of a B major scale, would be G sharp. We're taking that down to G natural. And now we've got A natural, which is just a flat 7 that we're familiar with, and B again, okay? So root, flat 7, flat 13, flat 5, 3rd, sharp 9, flat 9, root. Okay, that's a lot, right? But the idea is to get inside it. Let's do it in just one more from one more root, for example. So let's do it from C, all right? So now this is a C altered scale with a C7 altered chord associated. Those things are associated with each other. That means that we are talking about D flat or C sharp melodic minor. Let's just think from the scale degrees, okay? Let's try to simplify it a little bit. So we've got root, which is C, and then remember the 2nd degree of C major scale obviously is D. So we're gonna have a flat 9, so D flat, C, D flat. Now we're gonna take that D and we're gonna go up a half step to D sharp. Now we've got the 3rd, flat 5 is G flat, flat 13 is A flat, flat 7, B flat, and C. A flat, G flat, E natural is the 3rd, sharp 9, D sharp, D flat, flat 9, root. It's a lot of fun and a crazy sound, and there is, you know, certainly a way to think about it. One commenter said on my other video, like you could think of you could split this scale up too in a couple different ways. One being, I think, pretty obvious perhaps, is that we're thinking of the first half of it, or the first few notes, as just the beginning of a diminished scale, a half whole diminished scale. So you go half step, go up a whole step, then go half step, go up a whole step. So C to D flat is a half step, then you go up a whole step to E flat or D sharp, then a half step, then up a whole step again. Now here's where I sort of switch my mind. So we've got this beginning of a symmetrical diminish. Now I'm switching my mind to whole tone again. F sharp or G flat, whole tone, now symmetrical diminished. there's a lot of ways to think about this, but getting that the sound under your ear and getting the the notes under your fingers, it really sort of gives you a lot to play with. And as challenging as it sounds, I think if you work with it for a little bit, you will feel better about it. When we are using the walking side of our responsibilities, I am generally thinking like just, it's a dominant chord with a flat 5. That's pretty much, I want to make sure that I hit the flat 5 and think of it just sort of as a dominant chord. You can, of course, put those tensions in there, but as I said many times, there's not a lot of time in, especially if it's 1 bar or half a bar, to indicate anything else. You can't really fit in the flat 9 and the sharp 9 and the flat 13, right? You can't fit that in a quarter note. So I'm thinking dominant flat 5. But when you're soloing, you do have these kinds of options. And one, you could certainly pick directly from the altered scale. Like if we see B7 altered, you can think B7 altered, right? But one clever way that is a tool that I know a lot of people use and makes sense to me is when you see any dominant chord that is altered, X7 altered, whatever it is, B7 altered, go up a half step and play that melodic minor, that root melodic minor from there. So in other words, if we see B7 altered, think and play C melodic minor. It's just a half step up from B. If this is the note, the chord, B7 flat 5, just play a C melodic minor. You're fitting all those tensions in there. It's the same notes, just rearranged, right? But when we think up a half step like that, you are making sure to get the flat 9 in there, which is very common to voice. In other words, what notes are you choosing in the chord? It's very common to voice the flat 9 when you see an altered chord. So emphasizing that and thinking like that all automatically sort of gets you out of that starting from the root place of improvisation, right? And remember too that you can, especially with sensitive and experienced other players, improvise, imply, you can imply in your improvisation the change of what would be written down on a chord sheet. It doesn't always work. However, in many circumstances, when there is a dominant chord, especially when you sort of precede it well and resolve it well, you can imply an altered scale where there is not one written in. And sensitive pianists or guitar players will pick up on that if you do it over and over again, or it might not matter, there might not be clashes and so on and so forth. The thing is you can play with it. And to that end, I made an exercise for myself where I took the chords to Stella By Starlight and changed most of, not all of them, but most of the chords that are dominant to altered chords. And there's like one place where it sounds real weird, mostly because like you can notice that it doesn't resolve quite as well. The notes don't move quite as well to the next chord in certain contexts. I want to take the second to remind you that in iReal Pro, remember you can make a copy of and edit any song in there. Of course, Stella By Starlight is in iReal Pro. You can make a copy of it. You can change whatever chords you want to altered and play with that if you want to mess around and retain the original chords that are in there. Also remember that we have this practice tool in the app itself where you can change tempo and you can change key to as you'd like. Putting Stella By Starlight in other keys is a really good exercise, by the way, because it's not super logical necessarily. Nonetheless, so yeah, I made a backing track myself where I've got this, and what I did was take, like, for example, let's talk about the very first four chords, right? We've got an E minor 7 flat 5 essentially as the first chord. And then normally we've got some kind of A7 in bar 2. I've changed that to A7 altered, which doesn't sound crazy out there, especially with the flat 9, because you've got that B flat in there, which is sort of the home sound of the key that's usually done in B flat. And then it goes C minor 7 for bar 3 and then F7 for bar 4. I didn't make that F7 altered. But what I did was provide a sheet for you where I laid out when there are these altered chords that I put in, I put the corresponding melodic minor scale that we're playing, and you can play from that root position. So for A7 altered, we're thinking B flat melodic minor. And just to real quick, get us on the same page here, again, if the chord is A7 altered, I'm thinking B flat melodic minor, that would be B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. And in relation to A7, okay, remember the chord is A7, so B flat is the flat 9, C is the sharp 9, D flat is C sharp, the harmonics I'm talking about, right? E flat is the flat 5, F is the flat 13, the natural 13 of A would be F sharp, we're taking it down a half step to F natural. G is the flat 7, normal in a dominant chord, and A. That's the root of the chord, but we're starting from B flat. So let me improvise a little bit on my backing track, and I'm going to improvise the solo and try it as best as I can. And I'm going to include these points where there are the melodic minor over the altered chords. I'm going to make sure to try and include that and make it as clear as possible where I can. Let's listen to that. So hopefully you were able to hear when I was using the melodic minor scale up a half step from the dominant chord that had these altered tensions on them, the altered chords. And there were some places where it's a little weird sounding, especially in bar 8, where there is an A flat 7 altered that then goes to B flat major 7. That's a weird place to put an altered chord in this kind of context with a standard, but I tried to make the best of it, and hopefully it made sense and was moderately interesting to listen to. Hopefully this was all helpful for you and shed some light onto the altered scale and altered chords. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure to look for PDF where I have all the altered scales for you, as well as this sheet that I used for improvising over Stella By Starlight. So thanks for joining me, and look for those links below. Always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.